people can become so self-aware, like if your goal is to become more self-aware in social situations, so you do read the room better, right?
Right.
Then you're looking at yourself and you're looking at yourself and you're looking at yourself. And is that self-awareness anymore, or where does it cross the line to self-consciousness?
You said it.
Right?
You stole the words from me.
Right?
Yes. That's
Yeah,
it.
That's
it.
Today we are here to talk about the subject of self-awareness. And not just the obvious stuff that everyone kind of knows about self-awareness, but we're going to try to get into some of the unexpected ways self-awareness can affect your life, and even some of the common mistakes we make around self-awareness.
You know, we called this the wrong conversation for a reason, right? And it's because if you're having the wrong conversation, about self-awareness, let's say, you might find yourself being stuck in certain aspects of your life, right? Whether it's in yourself or your own development, your relationships, and discovering that you're having the wrong conversation, I think, is one of the most important things that you can do, right?
Are you self-aware enough to know that you are having the wrong conversation?
Exactly. Yeah. Right. And how do you go about that too? That's what I hope we explore today. Like, how do you achieve that level of self-awareness? That's a tough one.
I think that's why we're bringing it up today, because we both come from the world of personal coaching, and so we talk about this subject of self-awareness a lot with people, and we lead people through exercises or through conversations that help them gain self-awareness. And then through that self-awareness is how they're able to make the changes or go the places they want to go.
Yeah.
Right? It's not that we gave them some secret. It's that they just gained some level of self-awareness that allowed them to go there. And it's sometimes it's hard to explain to people up front before they experience it. How did self-awareness make me change what I'm doing in the world? But it's kind of how it works often.
It's the only thing that, if you want my opinion, really, like, and by the way, I felt like why we needed to talk about this, because, you know, we were talking about like the next thing we're going to talk. It's because I think literally every single episode we've referenced self-awareness.
To me, self-awareness, like, you know, I hear it in two places, but the main place I hear it is if you're watching the news or something, somebody will say, this person lacks self-awareness. Right. You know, it's usually when somebody comes up and they just seem clueless about the environment they're in, or they say something that just has no tact.
Right.
Right?
That's not playing well in the room at all. Right?
Yeah, they can't read the room. Right, exactly. Right, and so we all think of self-awareness as being almost a social thing, like being aware of ourselves socially, to watch ourselves so that we are reading the room, so that we are aware of how we're showing up with other people, how we're being read. But then that kind of leads to one of the first complications, I think, to thinking of self-awareness in that way. People can become so self-aware, like if your goal is to become more self-aware in social situations, so you do read the room better, right?
Right.
Then you're looking at yourself and you're looking at yourself and you're looking at yourself. And is that self-awareness anymore, or where does it cross the line to self-consciousness?
You said it.
Right?
You stole the words from me. Yes. That's it. That's it. And people confuse those things. Very much.
Well, I think that's one of the reasons why you said you really wanted to talk about this, was because of that line. And I think I literally stole that idea from you, because I think that was one of your main things that you wanted to open up about this.
Yeah, no. You know, the other thing I would say is I think it is very common, like you said, that people see it in other people, which is a very common human trait, right? It's easier to see it in somebody else. So, you know, but that's not a waste. That helps you go, am I ever like that? Right? Where am I like that? Or how am I like that? You know?
Yeah, and so I think that's the first wrong conversation is just literally mistaking self-awareness for self-consciousness. Right. Or not knowing where that line is, because they do kind of run into each other a little bit, right?
Sure.
I kind of feel like, because I'll be watching myself to make sure that I have enough self-awareness about how I'm showing up in a conversation. I just had a really nice lunch with my family, okay? And my wife will say, sometimes you have a tendency to pick a subject that no one knows much about and then over talk about it for a moment because you know you need to over explain to make it make any sense. Maybe be self-aware enough to know how much bandwidth people have for that conversation before you even start it, right?
Right.
But now I've become a little self-conscious about it, right?
Yeah.
Because one so easily bleeds into the next one. And so, but it's really good to take some time and think about where is that dividing line and what is that difference?
Yeah. I just had a conversation with a person in a coaching session a couple days ago, and they were sharing about how they're doing this therapy, and it's based upon intimacy, right? Relational intimacy. And this person realized, I never worry about my needs. Like when it comes to our sexual life, like I'm always concerned about the other person. So like I need to take responsibility for what I want and what I need and all this kind of stuff, right? So then they find that as they're doing this, right? In other words, when they're in the moment with their partner, now they're really in their heads, right? Because they're trying to figure out, am I doing this because I want to do this, or am I doing this because they want to do that, right? And that just crossed over, right? It was good to have that self-awareness to realize that, wow, maybe I don't think about myself or take care of my own needs or stand up, you know what I mean, whatever. But then it's easily slipped into that other place.
Well, I think that almost crossed the line into self-consciousness. Am I doing it right?
No, of course.
Am I being aware of my needs?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. Which got in the way of even understanding what the needs were or what I actually wanted, or, it's kind of strange. You wouldn't think that would happen, but it definitely does. It was a perfect example. That's why I thought I'd bring it up,
Well, it slips into being self-absorbed, right?
Yeah, that comes from like self-awareness where you're all about yourself. Meaning like, what do I want? What am I going to get? This would be a lot of the motivational stuff. This will, you know what I mean? That's where it'll show up. Writing down all my goals and what is important to me, and what it's all me, right? And when you see that, then you're starting to cross into self-absorbed for sure. And that doesn't usually smell well in a room either.
Well, so if you're self-absorbed and then become self-aware, it makes you self-conscious about being self-absorbed.
Exactly. There's a trinity here.
Put that together.
Right.
Well, it's just good to know that these things are all a bit hazy, right? These things are all they're all a bit combined, and it can very easily, without you knowing, slip from one to the next.
Yes. Yeah, they're like flip sides of a coin, Yeah. And a lot of that's going to have to do with your how healthy, or like if you're a self-conscious person, meaning if you lack confidence, then you're probably going to lean into self-consciousness, right? If you're a confident person, then you're going to lean into self-absorption. You're going to be, you're going to be the person that's talking about yourself all the time, and you know what I mean, that kind of thing. I think this, and I'm going to bet that a lot of people will relate to this. I mean, I know I can. In other words, that awkward moment of like you said, you laid down that kind of I've been self-absorbed in a conversation before, right? You show up, maybe had a lot of coffee and I'm in a really good mood and I'm just talking. And all of a sudden I realize, wow, you've been talking for like 10 minutes, buddy. Ooh, self-consciousness kicks in, right? There was self-awareness first, but then there was self-consciousness where I'm like feeling like, ooh, God, reel it in, right? That's an interesting trilogy there.
Well, the goal is to get that self-awareness, but then be aware when it turns into self-consciousness, right? And then just try to I think about this as, okay, what does this look like, right? How do you recognize that line between self-awareness and self-consciousness? And I think it's just staying self-aware enough to know which one you're doing. Like that's part of self-awareness, is to know which one of these am I engaged in. Self-awareness looks like, whoa, buddy, you've been talking for 10 minutes. Right? Or the person that you were talking to about the intimacy exercises, understanding that they have needs, that's self-awareness.
Yeah.
Right? Self-consciousness is showing up in the moment and being so worried about not doing everything right that you ruin the moment, right?
So you've given me the perfect segue to point out one of the first things that I think is critical to understand about self-awareness. And one of the most authentic forms of self-awareness, one of the most helpful and curative. Like, you're saying about awareness alone is curative. Isn't that I love that line so much.
That's a line I heard someone say that I just loved. Yeah.
I do too. Every time you say it, I'm always like tingle, because it's so true,
I like making you tingly. Yeah, it's
good. So one of the key critical differences in self-awareness, and if you're doing this, then it's going to slip into something else, and that's judgment. Self-awareness, true self-awareness, is not judgment. It's actually just awareness. You're not making a judgment about it one way or the other, because the moment you do that, there's danger, actually, right? And it doesn't meaning that you can slip into something that's not true. Like if I'm talking for 10 minutes and then all of a sudden I become self-aware, whoa, you've been going on for 10 minutes, right? And then I judge that and go, ooh, that's bad. I could easily slip into self-criticism or self-consciousness, right? And then reel it back in. Meanwhile, everybody could have been loving it the whole time, like enjoying the conversation, but I'm reading the room wrong only all of a sudden because I've slipped into judgment about myself. Do you know what I'm trying to say? And then I get, you see it? So that's anything. You know, that's anything.
The judgment is what makes you self-conscious because you're fearing the judgment. Or you're fearing the result of the judgment, either from yourself or from others. That's what makes you self-conscious. It's a protective impulse, right? Self-consciousness is a protective impulse, and so you're fearing judgment or the result of judgment. And the judgment, and this is another thing that divides these two that I think that you're hinting at, is that the judgment itself is like a big distracting shiny object, and it pulls you out of the moment you're in. The judgment steals all that energy.
It does. You know, I want to show how this happens in a more serious situation, because we're talking like hanging out with people at a party or something like that. Mm-hmm. Addiction or something like that, right? Something heavy, intense, that requires a high level of self-awareness to start to get in touch with, right? One of the least helpful things. Now, by the way, everything has its proper place, right? So to feel judgment for a moment is probably useful in a situation of addiction, right? But too much criticism, too much judgment leads to more addiction. Everybody that's ever, right? That's not helpful.
You feel guilty and you beat yourself up. Yeah.
You got it. And it's just the cyclical, because more than likely the guilt and the shame is what drove you to addiction to begin with, right? So if your self-awareness leads to more guilt and more shame, you're not finding your freedom from addiction. That's going to be, you know.
I remember one of the first things that stood out to me when I was investigating all things in the coaching world or personal development world. It was some Tony Robbins talk, because everyone I think probably starts watching Tony Robbins when they first get started. And so he has this thing called the Crazy Eight. And he talks about different states, people going to different states. And this is also part of what I talk with people with the Energy Leadership Index assessment that I give from the way I was trained in coaching. We also break things down into these states, and two of the states are like a guilt, shame, self-consciousness feeling, and anger. And judgment is in the anger thing, right? So you get angry at yourself, so you judge yourself, so you feel shameful, right? But the one thing that Tony Robbins said that I found really interesting was that you can't stay in any one of these states indefinitely. And so like physiologically, you just can't stay in the same mood all the time. Like you have to switch. And so, but what happens is that you'll so easily go from shame or guilt, from judging yourself, then you'll get angry. That you feel so shameful and guilty and that you're not doing anything about it. So you get angry at yourself, or you get angry at yourself for being addicted. Yeah. Right? So then you get really angry at yourself and you're in that state for a little bit. And what's that make you feel? Then you beat yourself up. And then that wears you out, and then you just feel guilty and shamed again. And then you get tired of being that way, so you get angry at yourself for doing it. And then you just oscillate. And he calls it the Crazy Eight because it just goes between guilt and shame and anger, and that's why it's kind of a trap. That's why you're saying it's a self-perpetuating cycle, especially in something like addiction.
Perfect, exactly, until there's a new level of self-awareness. That's what actually...
With less judgment.
That's right.
Yeah.
Seeing it clearly, like without just seeing it for what it is.
That is a goal. That is a self-awareness goal to me. True self-awareness goal.
Yeah.
Just seeing it. It doesn't require a response or a judgment or something.
Well, this comes down to those simple terms too, right? If you see something and you immediately say that's bad, then you want to avoid it. Right? That's a natural impulse. So the moment you start to do that motion of avoiding, you're starting to block out something, right? If you see something and you say, ooh, that's good, then immediately you want it, right? But then that also blocks out something, because now you're trying to This is why it interferes with actual awareness, true self-awareness. And the fact that we can sit in this place of non-judgment, of clarity. Now, by the way, it's a challenging state, and but it is, and it's not a natural place for us most of the time because we're always in judgment, right? Because we're always judging things, good, bad, want it, don't want it, all that. That's like a natural human thing. But we can achieve this state. We all do at periods of time. And those are the transformative moments. That's the energy that can shift things for real. Thus the awareness alone is curative thing, right? Like, that's what that's hinting to. The fact that when you touch that, when you taste it, when you see it, when you feel it, it has the energy to shift things.
It's a higher order of energy because the guilt, the shame, the anger, they just require all of your energy. They're very expensive states to be in.
Yeah.
Your brain is doing this. You're spending all your energy there. But if you can just look at it without some large judgment, some big judgment about whether it's good or bad. The land of good or bad is that land of polarity with a very sharp dividing line down the middle. Either it's good or it's bad. It's right or it's wrong.
And what's the truth, and David? So what's the truth, though?
It's both. It's always both. Right. Always. To some degree, right? Yeah, that's bad. There's probably a little bit of good. It's the yin and the yang symbol, right? It's the yin-yang. There's a little bit of good in the bad, a little bit of bad in the good. But it's always both in one thing, right?
Exactly.
But when you're in a mindset of judgment, the way the brain works is it makes things good or bad, right? So there's always a door being closed in judgment. But if you're out of judgment, all doors can remain open.
Right.
And more information can come through, and you get a more honest assessment of what's actually happening. And with a more honest assessment of what's actually happening, you have so much better options for how to respond to what's happening.
Right. Something new can arise too. I think that's one of the most, do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Something new. Otherwise, you're in the crazy eight, which I really loved. That's typically where we are. Like they say that, I forget how many thoughts that we have every day, right? But then like 95% of them are exactly the same thoughts we had yesterday, right? Like we're always doing this crazy eight thing, I think the other thing I want to say, just to clarify, because I think it's kind of important, I don't think, I'm going to speak for you, and if I'm wrong, you correct me, right? But I don't want it to be misinterpreted that we're saying that there is no such thing as right or wrong or good and bad. Because that's actually not what we're saying, or it's not what I'm trying to say. I mean, the addict to realize that his addiction is a problem, is bad, is an important thing to do. But in order to see that with the level of clarity that we're talking about, for that moment, it's very powerful and positive to set that stuff aside and just look, at the whole situation.
As it is.
As it is. And it's powerful. Yeah. And the story tells itself in those moments, and we don't have to tell stories about it. While I'm on a tangent here, if you don't mind, or going off here, I want to point out a couple of other things that is super interesting about awareness that is experiential. Like you can experience this, but it's going to sound really weird, David. So you prepared to get freaked out? No.
I'm ready to get weird. Yeah, let's get weird.
All right, let's get weird. Let's get our weird on.
Get kinky. So,
here's some characteristics of real awareness. Like the most authentic awareness. Again, and you can experience this, you just have to pay attention when you're doing it. Awareness doesn't have a gender. Awareness doesn't have an age. Awareness doesn't have a body type. There's a part of us that's actually more than all of that stuff. And it sounds weird, I know it does, but this is the truest sense of awareness. And again, this is the place of power. Like when you just, and it's where we get that clarity, where we can actually just look. It's an amazing moment. We experience these things in some very simple times, right? Like the beautiful sunset is one of the great examples, right? Or it's just that really pure, simple moment. It's just beauty does that, I think, a lot. Like if you're really experiencing something beautiful, it doesn't have any. The moment it has a story, it shifts a little bit. It still can be beautiful, but it's like you lose something, right? But there's that point of awareness where you're just aware of the beauty.
Yeah, it's a moment of clarity. That's just the they give it that term, a moment of clarity, but I think everyone understands that a moment of clarity is something that you have every day. It's like one of these things that happens when you really hit it, like you really...
So it's a way to get there, David, a little bit. I think that the how, let's bring it home like we used to say. We haven't said that in a while. How do you get to that level of self-awareness? Or can you? I mean, is it something can it be contrived, so to speak? Like, can we create that?
Well, I don't think it's a place you arrive in. I don't, is there a perfectly self-aware being? No,
Right.
Probably not. But I think it's also safe to say, and I know it's safe to say because we both work with people in coaching situations, is that people don't know themselves very well.
Yeah.
But we all assume that we know ourselves because we live with ourselves every day. We know every thought we've had. We know every fear. We know so much that we assume that we know ourselves. But so much of what we know can be an illusion. It can be a trick. It can be a story that we've told ourselves forever.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And we assume it's the story, or somebody else told us a story about us that we bought into. And so we think we know all this stuff, but one thing that I think is so powerful in coaching, or I love to give people personality assessments, because even though people can pretty much predict how they're going to show up on some sort of personality assessment, most people are often still surprised by something.
Yeah, sure.
There's still some piece of that. They're like, that doesn't sound like me. Really? Right? And then we go exploring.
Yeah.
And then sometimes, okay, maybe the assessment got it wrong, but these assessments are all questions people answer about themselves. They're the ones who answer the question. This isn't someone else's.
Yeah, right.
Right. Baggage being poured on them. They answered it. So it's like, are you really what you think you are?
Yeah.
How, for me, a lot of it is just, I just like to open up all these boxes. I like to play in the world of assessments, not so I can define myself, but so I can undefine myself almost. Because I'm looking for those surprises.
Yeah. I see what you're saying. Right. What are you missing?
Like sure. I mean, there's a danger in a personality assessment where you can say, "Oh, this is who I am."
Yeah.
Right, and then you put yourself in another box of judgment and stuff, and then you tell yourself a new story of that's who I am, and then that can limit you. That's a danger of those assessments. But the benefit of those assessments is that sometimes they surprise you. And it's the same thing in like a coaching conversation. If you're asking somebody some questions, and that's why I say all coaching is a self-awareness exercise, just a really profoundly effective one because there's partnership and people are leading you through it, but it's a self-awareness exercise, and people surprise themselves all the time. I'm always shocked by the questions. So I'll ask somebody a question about what they want in some area of their life or something, but if you phrase it just right, it's a question that they don't already have a canned answer for. I think it's always fun. If they have a canned answer, then you get the canned answer. But if you can ask a question in a way where they don't have a canned answer for, then they have to think. And then when they have to think, it's just amazing to be like, it's amazing to me they never asked themselves this before.
Yeah.
Right? They just relied on the canned answer.
Right.
But once they really have to rethink about it, they discover that the canned answer has almost no relation to them sometimes. Yeah. And it surprises them. Yeah.
It's I wanna, because I was thinking about it, and then it's like just so perfect the way this segued in again. Another conversation I was having this week with another, client. I asked a question, and they started to answer, and then all of a sudden he was like, "You know what? Let me sit with that for a minute. Hold on." He's like, instead of just saying immediately, he goes, "I just kind of want to," and he stopped for a minute. And he looked inside, and I immediately, David, I'm like, "Yeah, baby." Right.
Yeah, here we are.
He's
thinking about it. Yeah.
Something's happening. So, so this is a live example that I'm sharing, but it also highlights another way, I think. Quiet down. Quiet down a little bit. Yeah. Because all of the stories keep the crazy eight going. So quiet down a little bit, and you might find that there's something different. Like you might taste that weird kind of awareness that I was just talking about, where it's not about your story, your age, your sex, or anything like that, right? It's just kind of like, ooh. And so he sat there for a few minutes, not a few minutes, but probably 30 seconds or something. And it was so fresh. Like even the energy was, it was a beautiful moment. And at that moment too, I realized like, oh, we're really getting somewhere here, or he is, you know what I mean? Like he's finding his way. There was no doubt in my mind at that moment,
He's discovering some more self-awareness.
He was.
Because he was about to go into his canned answer.
Exactly.
And he realized it probably. And he realized the importance of the conversation that you were having with him. He's like, wait a minute. I know that that's a canned answer, and I know that there's probably some BS in there. So let me hold on. I don't know what I think.
Right.
I love it when someone says, I don't know how to answer that. Great. I'll sit and wait. Right? like that's a good question when they don't know how to answer it, because then they have to like literally gain self-awareness.
Yes.
They have to sit and get quiet and look. And they're curious, they're doing it with curiosity, so it doesn't have a lot of judgment in it. The story is what has the judgment.
That's right, David.
When they're just curious and looking, there's no judgment. And so they actually gain some self-awareness, and then they surprise themselves.
Right.
Yeah.
So
And
you
then
just
they
said two
learn
things
about
I want to
themselves.
highlight.
Yeah.
I don't know. Important. I don't know mindset a little bit. Like let go of what you know. Let's just for a minute assume, right? And then curiosity. They go together, right? That's a real. I just wanted to highlight what you just said. That those are more ways to gain more deeper self-awareness. I think.
And when you're curious, you're not too judgment yet. You're just curious.
That's right. I love that. I love that you said that. You're not too judgment yet. It's like pre-judgment, right? I love that. Yeah.
Yeah, because there's some acknowledgement that you don't know what's going on. Like you said, I don't know.
Yeah, I love this.
I don't know. And when you get to I don't know, you're in the right place.
Yes. You hate to be there. We all hate to be there, but it's a good place to be.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a good place, as long as it doesn't make you too self-conscious that you don't know.
Wait, what do you mean by that? I'm not sure.
I had this experience just last week. My wife and I were traveling, and we had these... we had really busy, intense days where we were just kind of exploring an area, but the weather was really crazy and bad, and so it was kind of, the roads were treacherous. We don't know where we are. We don't know where we're going. We're in a car we're not familiar with. There's a lot of brain power, and so it would tire us out. But because the weather was so bad, like things were shutting down early, and it's pandemic. Everyone's not gathering in bars tightly together that much right now, or something, or some restaurant, right? So all we could really do was go home. And so the trip was a mix of really intense mental work and then just sitting there at home for like lots of hours, because it's still pretty early when it gets dark and everything's shut and there's not much to do. And I was finding myself in kind of I was just in a negative state. I was just down about it. I was down about everything. And I felt like complaining, right? I felt like I just want to bitch right now.
Yeah.
I want to talk about the trip. I want to talk, everything's wrong, because when you're getting those states, everything's wrong. But through a little bit of self-awareness, I stopped myself and I said, wait a minute, I've been here before. I've been here before. I felt this. And later, after I got out of that feeling, everything wasn't wrong. So I don't know if I can trust my feeling right now. Right? That's a little bit of self-awareness. I didn't judge myself. I didn't feel guilty about the feelings. Well, actually, I started to. I started to get down on myself for being such a sourpuss on vacation, right? I started to get down on myself. I was like, no, that's self-conscious. I'm being self-conscious, or I'm being self-critical. I want to be self-aware. What's going on? Okay, I just had a busy day. I just did this. Now I'm sitting here, and I know this. Like, is this something I need to... This is one of the benefits of getting self-aware. Is this something I now need to dump on my wife on vacation? This mood I'm in. Right?
Yeah.
Or is this something I should keep to myself because it's really just about being tired? It's really about... But I don't know that until I take a moment and get curious, right? To take a moment and get quiet and watch myself without judgment as much as possible. And then I realized, I know this space. Nothing's wrong. It's me. Like, I don't need to bring this up. I don't need to. It's going to pass. I don't need to bring it up. Now, that's equally as important when something's going wrong and you search yourself. You're like, oh no, this is not going to pass. I do need to bring it up. There's actually something bothering me that needs to be shared and worked out or negotiated with my partner in life, whatever. But sometimes it's really hard to tell the difference between whether you're just in a mood, so you create a bunch of problems that don't exist, or whether you think you call everything a mood, and so you don't address problems that do exist. And self-awareness is the only thing that tells you which one of those. And think about how important that is to know that difference.
Yeah. I love that story too. I mean, I think that's such a common story that you shared. Like, that's you're on vacation, it's a little bit bigger, more than life, like more than normal life, average life. But that plays out in your average life too, right? I mean, over and over and over again, your everyday life of like, you get yourself in a state. And the way you described that, I think, was so perfect, because I've lived that so many times. I still do. I had a similar experience at work, like everything was going wrong. How, you're doing all these things and it's all going wrong. How can you not get frustrated? Well, you do get frustrated. Okay, that's done though now. The wrong is done. Is the frustration going to continue? Well, the only way for that to really not continue is to take that moment, is to be self-aware, and to take that moment to slow down a little bit and let the energy kind of spin out. Because it's always the crazy eight. I'm so glad that came up, because it's like, you're stuck in that loop, and it just kind of feeds on itself until you give it a moment away and let it kind of burn out a little bit, and then it shifts. And most things. And like you're saying, if it's something that's real, like really does need to get played out or worked on or something, that'll also be pretty evident if you quiet down and get self-aware enough. Let it play out a little bit, Yeah.
It takes self-awareness to know. It takes like you said about the earlier in our conversation, you talked about the person you were on a call with about the intimacy exercises.
Yeah.
Right? Like it paid to know that there was something that did need to be addressed.
Yeah.
Like the person you were talking with needed to get self-aware enough to know that they were denying a need or a want or a desire they had. Right? So it did need to be addressed. It wasn't just a mood or you know, like,
right.
But it takes self-awareness and curiosity to get there. And here's something I really want to say about the importance of self-awareness, because I think a lot of us, like we said before, we assume we know ourselves. We assume we know our stories. We assume we know our personalities, our wants, our needs, and all these things. And so we go out into the world, and then maybe something's not working in the world. And so our strategy is often we spend a lot of time trying to figure out the world.
Right.
Right? We're trying to become more aware of the world. And all of our energy is trying to figure out the impossible math of the world. And what we often forget, and I think that's the wrong conversation. What do I need to know about the world?
Right.
That's the wrong conversation. And a better conversation would be like, well, wait a minute, like, let me at least check in with myself. Is there something more I should be aware of in myself? Let me sit and get quiet for a minute and get more self-aware. Because when you change your understanding of yourself, you change your understanding of the world, right? Because you, like I said, when I'm in that mood, like on vacation, everything is wrong. The vacation is wrong. Home is wrong. I don't like my job. Maybe I even have a problem in the marriage that's not there. It won't be there in an hour. I'm in a better mood. Right? Well, so I'm glad I don't bring up a problem in the marriage if it's not really there because of the mood, right?
In an hour,
I don't want to drag my wife. Yeah, I don't want to, like, so, like, and if you can change your understanding, if you can understand, oh, I'm just caught in a crazy eight. I'm caught in a guilt, anger circle.
Sure. Right.
Right? I'm caught in that. That's what this looks like. Oh, that's what's happening to me. There's some self-awareness. This will pass in a moment. And let me not speak or make a decision or make a judgment on what's in front of me until I'm out of this space. Or let me account for this space as I do make my judgment. These are all the benefits of self-awareness,
Yeah.
The strategy is, anyway, just to tie it back in a bow or to put a circle on this, like the strategy is often, or the wrong conversation is often, what do I need to understand deeper about the world? When I think that it often pays more dividends to say, what do I need to understand more deeply about myself?
Right.
And the more you know about yourself, it changes how you see. And then you see a new world.
That's it.
Right? It's not the world you were looking at 5 minutes ago or an hour ago or a month ago or whatever.
Yeah.
It's a new world.
This reminds me,
so you didn't need to figure all this stuff out.
I just stumbled upon a quote from my book. I looking through some stuff it goes something like, the world is not what you think it is, but often your world is only what you think it is. right? Right? So in other words, like you see it, like your personal experience of the world becomes what you think it is, but that's not what the world is. You know what I mean? That's just your thinking about the world, right?
One of my favorite quotes, and I'm forgetting who it is right now, I wish I could remember, but that reminds me of the quote that you just said from your book. We don't see the world as it is. We see it as we are.
Yeah, I love
It's one
that
of my
quote.
or people don't see the world as it is. They see it as they are. It's an author, a novel author. I don't remember her name right now, but it's on the tip of my tongue. But I'll put it in a credit on the thing. But it's just so true. We see the world as we are, and so, but seeing the world, understanding how we are, therefore understanding how we're seeing the world, requires some self-awareness.
It does.
And you can change the world by changing you, because you see the world as you are.
Right. You know, the other thing I would say that it's really important, I think, about self-awareness, the truest sense, the biggest sense, like the goal, you might want to say, of the kind of, is to realize actually that you are not your thoughts and emotions, which is what rule us most of the, like that's when you're going to know, when you can feel that, like, and you start to sense that, that's when you're going to realize too, like when you step into that moment, you realize that this awareness has no sex, has no age, has no, you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't come with that. It's just there. It's just there. And how do you know you're not your thoughts and emotions? Because they're constantly changing. That's why, you know, so many times it's like we get wrapped up in this thing like you're talking about, right? Like, but it might not matter an hour from now because this is just how I'm feeling right now. And so often but we identify with that. You know what I mean? And the more we identify with that, the less we're in self-awareness. That's another way you might put that, right? Like the more you're identified with a particular thought or emotion, you're actually less self-aware.
But it takes a moment of quiet and a lack of judgment, or the removal of as much judgment as you can manage, right? To just see it as it is. Right. Just see it as it is. It's harder than it sounds. It is. Like I feel like we're just dumping. Just go get self-aware, everybody. No, your brain is not wired to look for self-awareness.
Yeah.
It's often, especially on painful or difficult or challenging things that you know. A lot of people avoid things not because they're necessarily painful, but because if I pay attention to that, I'm going to see how much needs to be fixed, and it's going to require a lot of energy. It's going to require a lot of thought. Like once I really see it, I'm going to have to acknowledge it. And once I acknowledge it, I'm going to have to do something about it. And that's going to be a lot of work. Let me just sweep that under the rug for the moment.
That's the dirty secret that people are avoiding all the time, right? Like, sounds great to be self-aware, but everybody knows what you just said, which is why a lot of us avoid it, you know? Yeah.
Yeah, it's Pandora's box. You don't really know what you're going to get when you become more self-aware. And some of that stuff is just nice self-awareness. Oh, these are my needs and desires. Oh, I want this instead of this. Now it's nice to know that. Some of them are not that pleasant and do have to be addressed, right? Sure. You have to take responsibility for what you find there, maybe. And a lot of people are like, I don't have the energy for that right now. Right. So it's not a natural state, is my point. People aren't just going there for fun or because they want to be all spiritual and stuff. Like it's not flowers and rainbows all the time. Not
all the time. No, definitely. But I think to do it at the level that we're talking about is to realize the value of it. You know, like in other words, you're not going to do it at the level that we're talking about, I think, unless you realize there is value there. And I do believe that there is, like limitless value, like priceless, you know what I mean? We're talking about something that it's so worthwhile you can't put a price on it. But I do agree, it does come at a cost to some degree. You're going to have to let go of some of these stories, some of these thoughts, some of these emotions. You're going to have to do that in order to reach this level of self-awareness. But if you don't, here's the thing I would say, you're only living half a life, you know? And maybe not even that, right? But you're just living a small portion of you know, right, of your potential as a human being. Because it's amazing what lies within. Yeah.
But all those things are adjusted first through self-awareness. Awareness alone is curative. Awareness is the number one power of coaching. And like you said at the very beginning, it all comes down to that.
Yeah. Yep.
Like it really does. It sounds maybe overly simplistic, or maybe we've talked about too much and made it sound too complex. I don't know, but either way, everything we've said here, I think, like, I can't imagine something in life that is not served
Oh yeah.
by
Agreed.
going there.
Agreed. Yep. Well,
All right.
David.
Well, with that, I'm gonna go apply some curiosity to my life and get self-aware and live in the space of I don't know and see what happens.
You do that, and I pray that it doesn't lead to self-consciousness.
Well, or self-absorption. That's my favorite.
That is yours. I think it's both of ours.
Yes, it is. Guilty as charged.
That's it.
I'm
gonna
now I'm
work on
self-conscious
that.
about it.
I'm going to see if I can look at that and just look at it for what it is. So I'm going to see all
For
of that
what it is,
self-absorption. I love that, by the way. That surprised me. Till next time, David.
Till next time. See you then.